These are the people on Georgia's death row. Virgil Presnell, 48 years on death row. He is incarcerated for assaulting two young girls in 1976 as they were on their way home. Laurie Smith, 8 years old, was killed by Presnell, who also essayed her 10-year-old friend. In August 1976, Presnell was found guilty of essay, kidnapping, and malice murder. In 1992, his death sentence was overturned, but in 1999 it was reinstated. Presnell was scheduled for execution in 2022, but because of the global situation at that time, he ended up avoiding it. James Rogers, 42 years on death row. In May 1982, James Randall Rogers received a death sentence in Floyd County for torturing and murdering his neighbor, a 75-year-old lady. Grace Perry passed away on May 21, 1980, when a rake handle was pushed up her private area with such force that it ruptured a lung and caused severe bleeding. Additionally, he attacked Edith Polston, Perry's cousin, who was 63 years old. Rogers was on parole for burglary at the time of the murder. Since 1994, the trial court has been considering his case about mental retardation. Dallas Holiday, 38 years on death row. In November 1986, he was given a death sentence in Jefferson County for the March 11 murder of Leon Johnson Williams, 66 years old. Holiday assaulted Mr. Williams while he was out for his daily morning stroll, shooting him and striking him in the head at least 7 times. The night before, Holiday had broken into a house and taken the item that would be used as the murder weapon. Holiday was previously convicted of several felonies. Michael Miller, 36 years on death row. In November 1988, he received a death sentence in Walton County for the robbery and murder of Larry Judson Sneed, 35 years old. On October 29, 1987, Sneed was traveling down a Walton County road when his car was shot at, forcing him to pull off the road. Mr. Sneed was wounded in the back and bled to death after he got out and tried to run. Miller and the co-conspirator had abducted a man during a break-in 2 days prior. Leonard Drain, 32 years on death row. On June 13, 1990, Renee Blackmon was picked up by Drain and co-defendant David Willis, who then took her to a remote road. On July 1, 1990, Miss Blackmon's body was discovered in a lake. Her throat had been slit at least 6 times, and she had been shot in the head with a shotgun. She had a rope fastened to a brake drum. Drain asserted after his arrest that Williams had relations with the victim, shot her, and then because she was still breathing, he slit her neck. Drain also claimed that he was unaware that Willis would murder the victim and that he was not involved in her demise. He did, however, acknowledge that he assisted Willis with burning her clothing, washing Willis's truck, concealing the gun, and disposing of the body. He also said that he stayed with Willis for 3 weeks until their arrest. He asserted that his fear of Willis was the reason behind his actions. DeMarcus Sears, 31 years on death row. On October 7, 1990, he and Philip Williams abducted Gloria Ann Wilbur. Then over the course of 4 hours, they robbed, essayed, stabbed, and beat her with brass knuckles. In May 1991, Williams received 2 life sentences. Ashley Jones, 29 years on death row. Jones and co-defendant Alan Brunner were driving a stolen car in Ware County on March 31, 1993, while intoxicated, when the vehicle experienced mechanical issues. Jones sought for assistance when he knocked on Carlton Keith Holland's door. Jones struck Mr. Holland's head with a wrench and then a sledgehammer while his wife looked on through the window, and Mr. Holland, 39, leaned over the engine. Brunner received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Lyndon Pace, 28 years on death row. Pace is a burglar and serial killer. He killed and robbed elderly women between 1988 and 1989, mostly in the Vine City section of Atlanta. Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King Jr., was one of the victims of his burglary. Pace received a death sentence for his crimes after being found guilty of 4 murders. It is widely believed he was responsible for a 5th, but he was not tried for it. Billy Rollerson, 28 years on death row. He murdered 3 people in Ware County, Georgia, over the course of 2 days, for killing 2 teens, one of whom he after killing her, and for killing a woman he robbed the next day, he was given 3 death sentences. Frederick Watley, 27 years on death row. He was given a death sentence in Spalding County for the robbery and beating death of a McDonald's restaurant employee on November 3, 1993. Mark Fugate, the 18-year-old victim, was a crucial witness against Wallace Marvin Fugate III, his own father, who murdered his mother. He was likewise incarcerated on Georgia's death row and was put to death in 2002. James Lee, 27 years on death row. A Charlton County Superior Court jury found Lee guilty and condemned him to death. He killed Sharon Varnador Chansey, his 43-year-old stepmother, by shooting her on November 17, 1996. Even though Lee begged the jury to spare him because he wasn't the same person that he was when he killed his stepmother, he claimed that killing was so simple that it would be easy to do it again when he was first questioned by the police. Lee was just 22 years old when he got the death penalty. Michael Nance, 27 years on death row. In 2002, he was found guilty of murder and given the death penalty for shooting and murdering a bystander following a 1993 bank heist. Nance asked to be executed by firing squad instead of the lethal injection because he fears the medication will fail to render him unconscious due to the back pain treatments he has had over the years. The prosecutor believed this is just a strategy because Nance is trying to avoid the lethal injection, the only means of execution that is legal in Georgia. Leon Tollett, 27 years on death row. Tollett was requested to come from Los Angeles, California to join Xavier Womack, who had been plotting a crime in Columbus, Georgia. Plans for the armed theft of an armored truck were finalized by Tollett, Womack, and the third guy, Jaquith Robinson, after they got to Columbus. The group followed an armored truck belonging to Brinks to the South Trust Bank on December 21, 1995. Womack was watching across the street, Robinson sat prepared as the getaway driver, and Tollett sat waiting with a newspaper close to the bank. When victim John Hamilton brought a money bag back to the Brinks' truck from the bank, Tollett came up behind him and shot him in the head, back, and legs, killing him. As Tollett ran away with the money bag, Carl Crane, the driver of the Brinks truck, and Cornell Christensen, the driver of a nearby Loomis Fargo truck, pursued him and shot him. Tollett shot back at his pursuers. Womack helped Tollett escape by firing rounds from across the street, but in the end, Womack and Robinson drove off without Tollett. David Franks, 26 years on death row. David Scott Franks was found guilty by a whole county jury of burglary, theft, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of cruelty to a child, armed robbery, and malice murder. For the deliberate killing of Deborah Diane Wilson, the jury recommended a death sentence after finding 5 statutory aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. Warren King, 26 years on death row. He was convicted and sentenced to death in Georgia in 1998 for the murder of a convenience store clerk during a robbery. John Esposito, 26 years on death row. Lawrence, 90, and Margaret Snyder, 86, were abducted by Esposito and his ex-girlfriend Alicia Woodward from a grocery store parking lot in September 1996. When the Snyders agreed to drive Esposito and Woodward to a hotel, they believed they were assisting a young married couple who were having car issues. A few days later, the Snyders, who had been married for 63 years, were discovered dead from bludgeoning in the Texas Panhandle. The New Jersey couple was charged with a similar murder in Georgia. Esposito and Woodward kidnapped a 90-year-old librarian, Lola Davis, from a North Carolina grocery store parking lot 1 week prior to the Snyders' kidnapping. The victim was discovered dead after being severely beaten. In Georgia, Esposito was convicted of murder and given the death penalty. Woodward was given a life sentence after entering a guilty plea. Jerry Heidler, 25 years on death row. A Georgia couple who looked after foster children and 2 of their own children were shot dead while they slept on December 4, 1997, by an invader who subsequently snatched 3 other children from the house. About 30 miles away, a farmer discovered the youngsters alive on a county road. One of the surviving girls was molested by Heidler as well. The victims were shot in their beds while they were asleep. They were Denny and Kim Daniels, their 12-year-old son, and their 16-year-old daughter. A 10-month-old child and a 5-year-old kid were left alive at the blood-splattered house. Mustafa Rahim, 23 years on death row. For killing a mother and her adolescent son in 1999, he received a death sentence. Rahim was also given a 20-year prison term for burglary and 2 consecutive life sentences for 2 charges of armed robbery. Rahim was convicted of killing Brandon Jamal Hollis, then 19 years old, and Miriam Diane Hollis on Good Friday in 1999. Richard Seeley, 22 years on death row. The state of Georgia sentenced Seeley to death for killing an elderly couple. According to court documents, Richard Seeley and 3 other people went to the old couple's house and killed them by repeatedly beating them with an axe. Reynaldo Rivera, 20 years on death row. He is a serial murderer who, between 1999 and 2000, kidnapped, essayed, and murdered 4 women in the Augusta metropolitan region in Georgia and South Carolina. In one of those cases, he was prosecuted, found guilty, and given a death sentence in Georgia. The victims were 17-year-old Melissa Faye Dinges, 17-year-old Tiffany Cherise Wilson, 18-year-old Tabitha Lee Bosdell, and 21-year-old Marnie Marie Glista. Joseph Williams, 20 years on death row. While he was incarcerated, Williams, along with several other inmates, were working on a plan to escape prison. They found a loose window and they were chipping at the wall around it with an improvised chisel. Another inmate, Michael Deal, saw what they were doing. Out of fear that he might talk to the guards and reveal their plan, the group strangled Deal, then tried to make it appear like he had used the sheet to take his own life. One of the inmates from the group was remorseful and eventually confessed. DeKelvin Martin, 19 years on death row. Martin was found guilty by a jury of essaying his girlfriend, Tamika Wright, killing her 12-year-old child, Savion, stabbing her elderly grandparents, Travis and Isla Ivory, repeatedly, committing aggravated sodomy against Mrs. Wright in front of their child, Christian Martin, and other offenses. Dorian O'Kelly, 19 years on death row. He was convicted by a jury of 2 counts of malice murder in relation to the murders of Susan Pittman and her daughter Kimberly Pittman, who was 13 at the time. O'Kelly was also convicted by the jury of 5 charges of entering a vehicle with the intent to steal, 1 act of cruelty to children, 2 counts of first-degree burglary and arson, and 1 crime of possession of a controlled substance. Nicholas Tate, 19 years on death row. Nicholas Cody Tate entered a guilty plea in 2005 to several linked offenses, including the murders of Chrissy Williams and her 3-year-old daughter, Caitlin Williams. He gave up his right to a jury trial when it came to the murder's punishment. Tate was given the death penalty for each murder after the trial court determined that there were multiple statutory aggravating factors at the end of a sentencing bench trial. Jeremy Moody, 17 years on death row. He was convicted of killing 13-year-old Chrysondra Sierra Kimball and 15-year-old Del Mattox after essaying Kimball in April 2007. Daryl Stinsky, 17 years on death row. He was convicted of killing Susan Pittman, 41, and her daughter Kimberly, 13, during a break-in at their Savannah home on April 10, 2002. Stacey Humphreys, 17 years on death row. In 2003, he robbed 2 Cobb real estate agents, stripped them naked, and shot them in the head inside their Cobb County office, earning him a death sentence. Brian Bookins, 17 years on death row. He was given a death sentence for killing his wife, Suzanne McDade Brookins, and her daughter, Samantha Giles, who was 15 years old. Jerry Jones, 16 years on death row. He was sentenced to death for the January 2004 murder of his former girlfriend's parents, sister, and their 10-month-old daughter. Lauren Rice, 16 years on death row. He was convicted in 2008 of the April 2003 murders of Connie Mencher and her teenage son Ethan in their East Cobb home. Michael Ledford, 15 years on death row. He was convicted of murdering Jennifer Ewing, who was attacked and killed while riding a bike in Cobb County along the Silver Comet Trail. Demetrius Willis, 14 years on death row. He was sentenced to death for the Atlanta murders of his former girlfriend, her boyfriend, and their 3-year-old son. David Edenfield, 14 years on death row. He was sentenced to death for the March 2007 molesting and strangling of 6-year-old Christopher Michael Barrios inside a mobile home, followed by the disposal of the child's body next to a road in trash bags. Rodney Young, 12 years on death row. He was sentenced to death for the Newton County murder of his ex-girlfriend's son, 28-year-old Gary Lamar Jones. Pablo Maldonado, 12 years on death row. He was convicted of killing 53-year-old Tim Clements, a landscaper from Conyers, on June 11, 2009. Adrian Hargrove, 10 years on death row. He was sentenced to death in Richmond County in 2014 for killing Allison Pedersen and her parents. According to prosecution testimony, Hargrove lured 18-year-old Allison Pedersen from her house on February 9, 2008. Pregnant Pedersen was stabbed at least 21 times in an abandoned trailer on Horseshoe Road using a butcher knife. After bringing her to the new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam, Hargrove burned her corpse. Pedersen resided with her parents, Andrew and Sharon Hartley, at the house on Bannock Mill Road, which Hargrove also revisited. They both suffered numerous stab wounds. The handle of an axe was also used to beat Andrew Hartley. Tiffany Moss, 5 years on death row. On April 30, 2019, she was given a death sentence in Gwinnett County. Moss killed her 10-year-old stepdaughter Imani via starvation and abuse. When Imani passed away, her weight was 32 pounds. Tiffany Moss is the only woman on death row in Georgia. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.